In this video I'll be taking a look at My Fair Lady on 4K disc, George Cukor's classic from 1964 that won 8 Oscars. Professor Henry Higgins, played by Rex Harrison, takes on a bet with Colonel Pickering, played by Wilfrid Hyde-White, to prove that he can turn a Cockney girl into a lady and pass her off as such in high society. That Cockney girl is played superbly by Audrey Hepburn. This was a film a lot of people had asked me to take a look at, and the feeling was, the general consensus was, this was one of the best 4K discs they'd ever seen. I think a few people might have got a bit overexcited by it because they haven't seen Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express. But there are a few others that are better than this. Tenet is another one, I think, but this is still very good. However, there's a bit of a story as to how this came about, and it's one of those films that, following Lawrence of Arabia and Spartacus, underwent a 70mm restoration. However, there's an extra on here which shows how they did it, but it's not really conclusive. It doesn't tell us definitively how the restoration was done, so I went digging a bit on the internet to see if I could glean any more information, and from what I can ascertain, I think there was a duplicate negative made in 1992, and it's quite possible that when they've gone to get the original negative out, they've gone into the vault. There's My Fair Lady. There's a beautiful 65mm negative because 70mm is shot 65. The extra 5mm has the sound stripes. So they've pulled that out of the vault and they think they've got the original negative, and they haven't. I don't know that, it's just my suspicion, might be completely wrong, but it would explain everything because I study these films, particularly when they're 70mm originals. I study them when they're projected in here on video, and this in places is exceptionally good, and then you change to another sequence and it's not quite so good. And I think that's because they had to go to the Technicolor matrices, the 3 Technicolor matrices that separate the primary colours. They had to restore from those 3 and then merge them together. And because of the Technicolor dye transfer system, it's not always possible to align them fully, and that does result in a bit of blurring. So you might get the main character in the middle in focus, but then you have to compromise a bit of the edges. I think that's what's happened in places. There were other places that even back in 1992, I think it was CineSite, were doing the digital restoration of the scans of the frames from the negative, and they were repairing tears and neg dust and all sorts of other damage from water. So my interpretation is that at the end of the process, a completely new dupe negative was created, and thank goodness they did it, because in here it does look great. It's just not quite as great as it would have been if the original negative had have survived all those years, but I think that's a bit too much to ask, and I'm pretty sure this is similar to what happened to the 2001 A Space Odyssey negative, and that's why I didn't feel that was quite as good as it otherwise would have been if the original negative had still been available. But another reason that these 65mm negatives get worn out is because every 70mm print that goes out to a cinema is struck from that original negative. Now with 35mm, the general release prints are struck from the internegative, which is 2 generations down, and it's actually the interpositive in between the negative and the internegative from which they work out all the colour grading and the density. So there's quite a lot that's always gone into these film releases, and I think that's part of the special appeal they have for me. It's just magic, and it's great to see such a great representation of My Fair Lady on home video. What incredible work to make an old film like this from 1964 look so good, so you can project it in your home or watch it on your television in your home in such high quality. So this was quite a successful film in its day. I think it's one of the best musicals there is, because I'm not a lover of musicals, but this was one of my mother's favourite films when I was a youngster, and so it stuck with me a bit. She always says when I mention it, "Oh, Pygmalion," because that was the original theatrical name for it when it was a stage show. Now, despite what the box may say, this has an aspect ratio of 2.20 to 1 because this was a 65mm shoot for 70mm release, and as we all know by now, that aspect ratio is 2.2 to 1. The sound is Dolby True HD 7.1. This had a budget of $17 million and it grossed $72 million. But of course, through the years, it's still selling and bringing the money through the odd re-release at cinemas. I believe it had one a few years ago. And of course, the home video market. So for those of you who are waiting for me to review My Fair Lady to see if it was worth purchasing, rest assured that it is. I got mine from HMV for $19.95 and I thoroughly recommend this. So I'm sorry that bank balance is going to be hit yet again. So that brings us to the end. If you enjoyed this video, please do the usual, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do so, and then it gives me more incentive to keep going producing videos like this. Till the next one, bye bye for now.